Okay, so here we are in the third part, the biomass and residuals report. It covers things such as pulp quality chips, biomass fuel, and processed residuals. The thing I think we're really going to be looking at here, that's primarily reported, are the prices for biomass fuels. Okay, and it's a little bit different from what we normally see. Normally we see how much money is paid to the landowner for as stumpage and stuff like that. This is more looking at it from the standpoint of maybe a timber buyer is paying a logger to harvest timber. Okay, they may be harvesting a big pile of timber for somebody, and they're actually paying for the logger to go out there and do this work. All right. And so it's actually on a per ton basis that they may charge, that the logger may charge to do this kind of work. All right. So, for instance, when we were looking at, actually we haven't looked at TMS, but basically what happens is TMS purchases the timber, and then they hire the logger to go and do the work for them. So it's kind of a different, kind of a backwards way of than what we've been kind of talking about in terms of how this gets done. So if you kind of think of it from that standpoint, this is how much a logger might get paid to harvest. In this case, let's assume it's biomass. All right, and so in the Piedmont, because it's a little bit harder to get around, a little bit steeper slopes, your averages are going to be a little bit higher to basically glean that that material off. Okay. Notice that the mountains are not even listed in here because there's virtually no market for that type of material up in the mountains. But you go into the swamp areas and they're getting paid considerably higher because of the type of equipment that's needed to go in there and glean that stuff, and just the amount of work it's required. So these prices do not include, I'll go down here to this definition, it's amount paid to harvest the timber. In this case, let's think about biomass as being the product that they're harvesting. They're gleaning the stuff that was left behind, chip it up and load it onto a truck, and it doesn't include any of the hauling costs or any of the other administrative and costs that are involved with that. So this is kind of the bare minimum that it costs to have this work done. And then there's a haul rate. Okay, typically if you break it down and say the average distance that most of these guys are willing to travel to break even is about 76 miles. And if you break that down, again, we kind of talked about this. You got 25 tons per truck. If they're getting $20 per ton at the mill, they need to kind of backtrack and see how much it is that they need to get, how much they need for their haul rate and how much they need to be paid to actually remove the stuff from the site. So that's really, it's kind of going backwards using this sort of a distance and what the mill is willing to pay, and then just kind of going, all right, we need to get this, plus we need to pay for this, plus we need to, get commissions, and we need to get a little bit of profit out of the deal as well. So, and of course, as diesel price goes up, these prices tend to go up as well, because certainly the haul rate goes up. Okay, that's pretty much what they're talking about. And then you've got different types of removals that are taking place. A final harvest is relatively easy to get into, and I guess it pays to really have that cleaned up nicely. So they're willing to pay a fairly high price for that. And thinning operations, of course, it's a little bit tougher to move around in thinning operations, so that may account for some of these higher prices, especially natural thin, where things aren't all just perfect rows. So anyway, so that's this section right here. We might as well just go on to the very last section as well. And this is basically kind of what you've seen when I first introduced you to Timber Mart South about a year ago. It breaks it up into these products right here, and here we're just simply looking at the North Carolina prices right now for these. So you've got Area 1, which again is up in the high Piedmont in the mountains. Area 2, which is the low Piedmonts in the coastal plain, and it breaks it up everything based on dollars per ton. And now that we know how to convert that to Doyle, or if you were working with pines, you would probably want to convert that to Scribner. But these were the basic things that we were looking at: pine saw timber, pine chip and saw, pine pulpwood, mixed hardwood saw timber, and hardwood pulpwood. They actually had a couple of others. I think they had poles for pines. They also had high quality red oak, and I'm trying to think, there was yet one more. Chip and saw. Oh, they got chip and saw here. There was yet one other. I don't recall what it is now, but so what this is showing is the pine saw timber versus the hardwood saw timber in North Carolina, and then the pine chip and saw. If you compared the pulpwood stumpage prices in North Carolina to the rest of the South, we tend to rip landowners off in North Carolina. We have and I'm not sure exactly how that market condition got started, but we tend to not give what you tend to see for the rest of the South. We tend to be considerably lower than the South. Again, here's where you can make these changes, convert those prices from tons to Doyle or Scribner for any one of these markets here, products. And again, it's just trying to show you this quarter versus last quarter versus 2016, what our prices seem to be doing. Okay, and that's kind of neat to see it on the state level. So this is for the whole state. Okay, and then they break it down into Area 1. Whoop, where'd it go? I think they break it down into Area 1, Region 1, and sorry, not trying to make you seasick. I'm just trying to make sure I'm in the right spot. So they break it down into Region 1, the mountain region. So pines, you're still going to be seeing loblolly pines down once you get down off of the mountains here. So part of this area does include southern yellow pine as well. So that's why you see the chip and saw markets and those things. But you see pine fetches quite a bit more money down on the coastal plain than it does up here, simply because it tends to be better, and it seems, and there's more mills down there, so it seems to be in higher demand down there. And that's pretty much the case for chip and saw, and pretty much the case for the pulpwood, because that's where the big sucking sound for pulpwood is, down on the coast. Saw timber, hardwood saw timber tends to be a little bit higher paid, but the pulpwood's not, okay, because there's just and that's interesting. With all the pellet plants that are coming in down there, you would think that the pulpwood price for hardwoods would increase as that demand. They probably have not hit that demand yet, though. And then, of course, you could take things. They have the high and the low averages, and then the state averages for any one of these. So here, this looks more like what we were looking at before. Oh, the ply logs. That's what I was missing. So pine saw timber, chip and saw, pulpwood, ply logs, and power poles. And then they had the high quality oak saw timber. You see the price is considerably higher than the mixed hardwoods. Okay, and then mixed hardwoods and then hardwood pulpwoods. So again, you get the highs, the lows, the averages, That's for the state, and then I believe they break it up, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, they jump right into delivery price. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the areas. Okay, area 1 and 2. So you could look at the mountain prices for oak saw timber in Doyle. In tons, and then convert that to Doyle. Those are the same numbers I think we were looking at before. Then they jump into delivered prices. So up above was all stumpage, and then we have delivered prices. So if you're curious what the mills are paying in your particular area, you can take a look at that. And one thing I did want to point out to you, let's just take a look at let's go down here to the high quality oak. Okay, delivered price, $66.48. Okay, keep that in mind. Back up here, $66.48, and compare that with what the landowner is getting, $46.35. So $66.48. $46.35. So they're making 140% over the above. Let me do this a little bit differently. I'll go equals that minus that. That's how much more it is, divided by the original. So, okay, I just subtracted the 1 from it, huh? So it's only a 43% increase. You got to ask yourself, how did they do it? It's just amazing. And maybe it refers back to an old Tom Waits song that I remember. They want your business. And so anyway, it really is amazing to me how they can, not be able to get as much money as I would expect, and still be able to survive. So anyway, but that's kind of what's going on here with the Timber Mart South. It's got some really good information in there. It looks daunting at first, but once you see really what's going on, it's all the same information. They're just showing it for different groups. Okay. So different regions, different groups of people are being paid different things for it. And it all stems back to the demand and some of that information that we saw in the very first Timber Mart South. So anyway, I trimmed this down to a 3 session, a 3 video session rather than a 4. So that's kind of good. And we're saving time already. All right, so wishing you the best on the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you Monday. Bye.